My name is Mike Shee, and I'm a security solutions architect. I work at eSentire, been here about 5 years. And today, well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I started in the MSSP space, Managed Security Service Providers, and we did platform management, authorized support, did SIM. Are you guys, anyone familiar with SIM? Security Incident and Event Management. But we noticed there was a gap where we would get alerts, we would let the customer know, hey, we saw this, but it was up to the customer to respond to the incident. So I saw there was an opportunity for response because the client ultimately needed to respond to threats. We would alert them and it was up to them. So that was definitely an opportunity. And then I started working at eSentire about five years ago. So today what I want to do is kind of make you a better educated consumer of MDR. Have you guys heard the acronym before, MDR? It's Managed Detection and Response. And kind of go over the acronym soup so you can make a good determination of what's the best partner for you. Even MDR providers, MSSP providers. So we're going to talk a little bit about who are the adversaries, right? Who do you need to be concerned about? Secondly, cybersecurity is a big data problem and how you deal with I call it a tsunami of data. How do you make sense of it? And the third piece is defining the marketplace. And finally, talk a little bit about our approach. So who are the adversaries? These shady individuals. Here's the unusual suspects, or you can say the usual suspects. And starting on the far right is the insider. The insider is one of the most dangerous person to have because they're already inside your organization. They're inside the castle walls. They have the keys to the kingdom. So they're very dangerous and they're hard to detect because they're already in there. So that's one you need to watch out. Corporate espionage, a disgruntled employee. And those are the tough ones, even for us, right? We sell security services, but if you're already in and you're bypassing those security controls, how do you detect this individual? The second one is the getaway. They're too young for jail. They're trying to create a reputation for themselves, hack corporations, and if they get caught, really it's a slap on the wrist is all they're really going to get, and they're back at the game. And then you have the activist or the hacktivist, right? Pick your cause, pick your religion. They want to create chaos. They want to do defacement of your site, ruin your reputation. And a lot of times it's a smokescreen for other nefarious activities. So to the left is the nation state actor. I like to say they have a license to hack, right? And they are experts. They are trained in techniques and tactics, and they're very dangerous. And they play to win. And a lot of times the getaway and the insider try to emulate that nation state actor. And then to the left is the professional. This is us in the room. We do our 9-to-5 job, but what do we do at night? It's kind of like organized crime. They have their 9-to-5 job, they work at the restaurant, the garbage disposal company, but what are they funneling through? How are they making money in the after-hour market? And then finally, we have the mule. And the mule is where the rubber meets the road and turns in the internet activity into cold, hard cash. So that's the end of the supply chain, so to speak. So here are our unusual or our usual suspects. So cybersecurity really is a massive data analysis problem. We have all these tools out there, all these services. It's all about bringing in data. But how do you make sense of the data? How do you make it actionable and respond to threats? It's a challenge. Well, really what you do is you have to manage that tsunami of data, and you have to make sense of it, leveraging an intelligent platform. So how many people have heard of XDR? Extended Detection and Response Platform. And really it's an ecosystem that you take the telemetry or all the data and you bring the data in, you make sense of the telemetry within the ecosystem or the platform. You need to ingest it, you need to normalize it, you need to enrich it, ultimately until it gets to somebody to make sense of it. And interesting, it's similar to a SIM in a lot of ways, but it's changed over time. So you really need to make sense of all the data. So defining the MDR marketplace. So MDR means different things to different people. Back when I started about 5 years ago, I think there was like 15, 20 MDR providers. Now today there's several hundred MDR providers. And there's also companies that are MDR in name only, right? Just like we talked about SD-WAN and SASE, everyone's trying, and they talked about the bullseye and the arrow. People are moving to the MDR space, and a lot of them are MDR only. So what does MDR mean? So I'm going to try to define that for you so you can make the decision on who to pick for your provider. So there's 4 key technical criteria for evaluating MDR providers or MSSP providers out there today. And here are the 4 key criteria: visibility, detection, signal fidelity, and arguably the most important, response. What is the response capability? Let's paint the picture. So visibility. What level of visibility does your provider have to your infrastructure? Can they see network traffic? Can they see cloud, endpoint telemetry? Can they detect just signature-based threats, unusual activity? So understanding the level of visibility they have to your infrastructure, because everyone's infrastructure is different. A lot of people are moving to the cloud, but guess what? There's still physical infrastructures that need to be protected. So visibility is the first. Second is detection. Actually, no, signal fidelity. So what is the quality of the signal being pulled in? You've heard of garbage in, garbage out. So here's a good example. On the network, we do full packet capture. Back around 2001, they called it deep packet inspection, and the government was doing deep packet inspection. That kind of scared me back then, like, wow, they're doing deep packet inspection. And really what it means is, well, here's a comparison. Full packet capture versus NetFlow, 2 different technologies. And here's an example. NetFlow would be, you get a letter in the mail, and it's addressed to you, and it shows who it came from. So that's NetFlow. You see where it came from, you know where it's going, but you can't see inside the envelope. But with full packet capture, you can open the envelope, and you can look inside. You can open up the letter, you can read the contents of the letter, and that's full packet capture. Also, you take the letter, you flip it upside down, you shake it, make sure there's no white powder inside the envelope, right? So that's a comparison of full packet capture versus NetFlow. And that's signal fidelity or the quality or the value of the signal. The third one is detection. What level of detection capability does the provider have? Is it straight signature-based threats? Does everyone know what a signature threat is? So basically it's a known threat. So it's easier to identify those threats. But there's also anomalous, unusual activity, a disturbance in the force. You got to look for those too. So detecting those are important, leveraging machine learning, AI, and also proactive detection, threat hunting, going in customer networks, infrastructure, looking for threats proactively. So those are 3 types of detection capabilities that you need to ask your potential provider. Signature, unusual activity, proactive threat hunting. And arguably the most important is response. Response means different things to different people. So an analogy one of my coworkers likes to use, your house is on fire. Okay, so someone calls you on the phone, hey, your house is on fire. That's a response. Another level of response is the house is on fire. They let you know and they give you a hose. Here, Mr. Customer, here's a hose. Put the fire out. The third level is the fire department shows up and they take care of the whole situation. They put the fire out, they take care of it, and they also do the remediation and the whole deal. So response means different things to different people. So it's important to understand the different response capabilities. At eSentire, we call it a big R versus a little r, something to think about. And we'll talk about that. So those are the 4 key criteria when evaluating. So here's another way of displaying it. So here's the 4 key criteria right here. And on the far left, we evaluate different approaches. One of them is our good friend, the SIM, Security Incident and Event Management. I consider a SIM a Swiss Army knife of everything. It does a lot of different things. But a SIM is only as good as the rules, or I should say the log sources that you're ingesting. If you're not ingesting certain log sources, you're never going to see the activity. If you don't have a specific rule written to detect that, you're never going to see it. And we call that single telemetry. So SIM as a standalone doesn't score very well, but when combined with other telemetry, it's very helpful. And then moving to the right, EDR. Does anyone know what EDR is? It stands for Endpoint Detection and Response. There's network detection and response, there's endpoint detection and response, and really it's an agent deployed to everyone's endpoint. It could be your laptop, server, workstation, VM, and it's able to analyze what's happening on the endpoint. And if there's unusual activity, you can respond to it. So some examples are Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne. That's an example of an EDR solution. Great tool, but as a standalone, it's single telemetry. And you're going to hear me use this word telemetry a lot. So it doesn't score very well. Now moving to the right, and of course you see also is a little r. So little r is you purchase the tool, it's up to you to respond to the threat, right? That's the little r. To the right is MDR with multi-telemetry. Now you're getting better. Now you're combining maybe network, endpoint, some cloud. Now you have multi-telemetry ingestion. You kind of can see what's happening across the hybrid infrastructure, so you're doing better. But again, ask the question, who is responding to the threat? Who's responding to the threat here? Little r versus big R. Now to the right is our service, MD Big R, embedded real-time incident response, the ability to pull in multiple telemetry sources to get the picture of what's happening across a hybrid infrastructure. So other things when you're evaluating MDR and MSSP providers, these are kind of standard things. What's the company profile, right? Take a look and see what their history is, their financial strength. How long have they been in business? Are they investing in research and development, right? We use a term at eSentire, it's called the Red Queen effect. If you don't evolve, you will die, right? You always have to future-proof and work on your solution. It's only as good as it was yesterday. It has to keep up with the technology, with the threats that are out there in the wild. People. People is key too. What kind of people do you hire? Talked about innovation and demonstration of delivery and looking at what customers say about the actual service. So here's what to expect from your cybersecurity partner. Operational leadership. How is their security operation center run? What is their level of expertise? What are their service capabilities? Can they just see network traffic? Can they see cloud, endpoint? Do they respond to threats? Is it unlimited response? That's another thing with the R, the big R. Is it unlimited response? Do they respond up to 10 incidents and then from there you pay? Those are good questions. Understand the expertise. Talked about the Red Queen effect. That ties into threat intelligence, right? You have to know what's happening out in the wild in order to make your solution viable for catching the latest zero-day threats. Demonstrated value, maybe that's reference selling, perhaps. Maybe it's NPS score. Maybe it's customer retention. Ask those questions of your prospective clients. And culture and experience is a good one too. I'm going to skip through these. This is kind of like how we meet these, which I'm going to skip. And I'm going to pause right there. Does this make sense? Is this helping you? Do you have any questions so far? How many people here use some type of MDR or managed security service provider? Okay. Are you guys satisfied with your service? You happy with it? Maybe this will give you some questions to ask them, to understand it a little bit better. So let's see how we are on time. 10 after, okay. So let's talk a little bit about our approach. Our approach to eSentire is cyber resilience. That's going to be really our push in 2023 because resilience cuts across all aspects of security. So what is cyber resilience? So here's some definitions from a NIST perspective. Are people familiar with MITRE and MITRE attack framework? It's pretty interesting stuff. Look it up. It talks about the techniques, tactics, and processes. Is that process? Techniques, tactics, procedures. But really, we define it as how effectively your business can anticipate, withstand, and recover from a cyber attack. Those are really the three main pillars. Anticipation, withstanding, and recover. And it's about building resilience. It's not when you're going to get attacked, or it's not if you're going to get attacked, it's when. Everyone is going to get attacked. So you need to be prepared for that. You need to do tabletop exercises. You need to anticipate it. You need to plan for it. You need to be ready for it. Ideally, you want to withstand it, right? I'd rather you not get to the recovery phase because that's kind of a nightmare and it's very risky. So cyber resilience ties into risk management. Risk is part of cyber resilience. So really how we approach it to anticipate, withstand, and recover, on the far left is exposure management. And I call this cybersecurity hygiene, right? Just like you need to keep good hygiene at home, brush your teeth, comb your hair, go to the doctor, all that stuff, you need to do that from a cybersecurity perspective. You need to do security awareness training, penetration testing, manage vulnerability, all the key things, because you want to be able to anticipate it and prepare for it. Now, in the middle is withstanding it, right? It's your security services provider. In this case, it would be us, MDR, Managed Detection and Response. You want to prevent it. You want to stop it. You really don't want to get to the recovery phase. That becomes a problem. But in the recovery phase, we can help you with digital forensics and incident response, IR. And a lot of companies and insurance companies, cybersecurity insurance companies require you have some type of MDR, MSSP in place. Do you guys have cybersecurity insurance? Anyone here? Have you noticed they're a little tougher with policies? Have you had to go through the due diligence? Did you have to, you're nodding your head, did you have to change anything? Yeah. Did that require you shopping for different solutions?
No, it was more internally.
Yeah, because insurance companies in general, they don't like to pay out. They just don't. So really it comes into cyber resilience, reducing risk, and ultimately there is residual risk, and that's why you have cybersecurity insurance. For that residual risk, you cannot eliminate. So a little bit about us. We had our start in 2001. We are based in Canada. Our founder, Eldon Spickeroff, he developed a network sensor, and he started up in New York City in the hedge fund space. And he deployed this sensor, and it did full packet capture on the network. Every packet coming and going from the network, we had visibility on. And at the end of the engagement, the clients in New York City said, Eldon, we love the visibility that we've gathered from this network sensor. Can you keep it in place? And they were like, absolutely. And that was the beginning of eSentire. And back then it was single telemetry, just looking at network traffic. Since then, it has grown to multiple telemetry. Endpoint, cloud, network, log, it brings it all together so you can get that full spectrum visibility of what your adversary is doing across your hybrid infrastructure. We have 2 security operations centers. one in Cork, Ireland, one in Waterloo, Ontario. They're both 24/7, 365. We have over 2,000 customers and in 80 countries. And at the end of the day, we're a service. And if you're going to take one thing away from today, we are a service. And our service is to make sure you do not have a business impacting event. That's what we do. We monitor 24/7. We make sure you can conduct business on the lowest cost channel, i.e. the internet. And we don't want it to become the most expensive channel by having a business impacting event. So that's our main goal of our 2 SOCs and our threat hunters. So this is really how we do it. I talked about full pattern. If this thing works, this has a laser. Maybe no, maybe not. So network, full packet capture on the network. There's all kinds of talk about moving to the cloud, but you still need to protect the network. Your corporate headquarters needs to be protected. Your data centers need to be protected. And I talked about signal fidelity. Network is still one of the best out there. We can see every packet coming and going from the network. It has a built-in IPS, IDS, threat feeds. And most importantly, we can respond to threats. So if we see something unusual at 3 in the morning, we can disrupt the traffic and stop it. So you don't have to wake up at 3 in the morning and put a shun rule on the firewall. So that's the full packet capture. We have all the public and private threat feeds. So it's pretty straightforward to see signature-based threats. But we also baseline traffic on your network for several days so we know what normal looks like. We look at the ports, protocols, processes. If we see a disturbance in the force, something unusual, we will pivot to it and respond to it. It's kind of like a DVR at your house, records every channel, every station, and our threat hunters will pivot to the network sensor if they see something unusual, and they do something called retrospection. It's kind of like hitting your VCR or your DVR and rewinding and going back and forth and kind of following the cookie crumbs to the cookie monster and then responding to the threat and taking the cookies from the cookie monster. And then endpoint, 2 flavors. EPP, Endpoint Protection Platform, formerly known as Next-Gen AV. And then we do EDR, Endpoint Detection and Response. This is your NDR, Network Detection and Response, Endpoint Detection and Response, MDR, Managed Detection and Response, and then XDR. And XDR really is the ecosystem or the platform. We call it our XDR platform. So we use best-in-breed technologies in order to deliver our service. From an endpoint perspective, SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, Carbon Black, Microsoft Defender. If you guys have it today, we can supply our service right on top of it. And then from a logging perspective, Sumo Logic, Microsoft Sentinel, and then cloud. And we also support the Defender. We have used Lacework for cloud. So, we talked about big data, security really being a big data problem. We talked about that tsunami of data. But in a way, you want the tsunami, right? You want to pull that telemetry in to a platform and then to make sense of the platform. And that's really what we do. We pull it into our platform. We call it our XDR Atlas platform. To ultimately, it gets to a threat hunter. And the threat hunter makes the final determination of how to respond to the threat. There's a lot of talk about AI, machine learning, but you know what? We're still the sharpest tool in the shed. And so are our threat hunters. They apply AI as well, and it's abstract thinking and intuition of how to respond to a threat. Hopefully ChatGPT doesn't take that away, but I'm sure that's coming soon. So that's really how the entire ecosystem works together to handle all that data coming in. And I'm going to pause. Any questions at all?
Are you saying an actual human looks at it in regards to response?
Yes.
In 100% of the cases?
Not 100% of the cases.
So
No.
it gets filtered?
It gets filtered. Yeah. So we have automatic blocking mechanisms. So we can block stuff based on IPs and domains and threat levels automatically. But it ultimately,
Not like pattern-based.
Exactly. Yeah. So we try to whittle it down as much as possible, do the heavy lifting through technology, and ultimately it'll get to that threat hunter. I'm trying to think what other slides I have here. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from Iron Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So it ties back to cyber resilience, and in the three major components, have a plan. Practice the plan. Do tabletop exercises. Assume you're going to get breached. Be ready for it. Constantly practice, train your employees, cybersecurity awareness training. You know, a lot of times, I consider us in the room the human firewall. We really are the weakest link. A lot of the times, that's how they get into the network. So just really pay attention to what you click on and what you do. And that's pretty much it. I don't know if I kind of whizzed through that. I guess a little bit. But any questions at all?
Is that a picture of Mike Tyson? We don't think it was.
I think it was. I think that was Tyson, yeah.
He's just missing the tattoo on the left side of his face.
Yeah, that's the pre-tattoo, yeah.
Hey, you brought up cyber insurance.
Yes, sir.
One thing I've learned in the last 2 years on that, some friends of mine they're big into that, is you actually have to show proof that your cyber protocols were followed if you want to get paid. They will request, and part of your agreement when you signed it is there is nothing off limits. When they request it, they get it. You have to have a documented plan, and then you've got to be able to show that every step of that plan was followed, or they start notching down the checkbook to where, oh, you got your $10,000 right here, but because you didn't do X, Y, and Z like you said you would.
Absolutely.
And there's got to be sign-offs and rights. It's crazy.
Well, it's funny because I used to laugh a couple years back. They're like, oh, I have cyber insurance. I'm like, read the fine print. And now they require controls to be in place, right? You need endpoint controls, network. Plus, to your point, once it happens, what are you doing?
You know, one of the things that everybody's always like, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. There's a simple thing that hasn't happened yet, but in my world, I'm like, that was me. I'm the guy thinking, how would I screw this up? Let me give you an example. So we have ECS, right? Elastic Cloud Storage Platform, right? Everything else, it's the slowest operating piece of shit you ever saw. Well, it does what it's supposed to. It's supposed to files that nobody's touched, all right? Off the other subarray. Well, if you go out and touch that file, it'll go get it and rehydrate it. How many billions of files have never been touched, but if you rehydrated them all in a day, how would you track the fact that that was going on when it's normal operation, right? He has access, but all he did was open it and close it. And he had something doing that all the time. What do you think your storage array is going to be doing at this time? It's going to the top. And now how are you going to get that shit off?
Yeah.
You can't, because he gave it today's date. So all your ECS stuff, oh, it's sitting out there going, yeah, we sent it back. But your main storage that you need for performance is now going to be slowing down. And it's going to be full. And you can't just go down to Maristop and pick up an array and stick a drive disk in and call your storage guy, and he's going to go, sorry about your luck, but we're 6 months back on that. You know, you now got a problem because you don't know what files should be put back. That's the other part of what we're doing now is that you don't have to take them out. You can take them out real easy by using their own tools against them.
Yeah. No, it's tough. It's a challenge.
I have a question for you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
What do you say to a client who's started the SASE journey and they picked a provider, right? And they've gone down, they've started to improve their security posture. How do you enhance or displace or help that client?
I mean, it depends what type of infrastructure they have. I mean, we consider ourselves the last line of defense. We don't want to rip and replace any solution you have in place today. So you're still going to need those SD-WAN and SASE type tools, right, to monitor traffic, look for traffic. but we're going to place different detection capabilities along your hybrid infrastructure. Full packet capture, endpoint, cloud, log, just to gain that additional visibility and have that overlay on top of your infrastructure. So we're a service. Our main goal, like I said, is to make sure you don't have a business impacting event. So our tools and service are put in place to do that.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but it's something kind of heavy. You have, you said 2,000 plus customers now. When you learn something with one, is that intelligence being applied to all of your clients?
Absolutely, I didn't mention that, but yeah. When we see something unusual, we will take that intelligence and we'll update our connectors. So our log connectors, our cloud connectors, our network, we will update it to detect that threat from a signature-based perspective. Because once you understand that threat, you can put that signature rule in, it's much easier to respond automatically to that threat.
So you have like, because a lot of us still have some people in the office and people away. Do you have that ability to integrate with like the Aruba switches where they could actually just disable that port, that particular physical stuff?
We don't really do it at that level. No, it's more endpoint.
I would love like, hey, we just spotted something, we got the data for it, I want to shut that off. Use the API and shut that port off.
Yeah.
So then that generates, hey, my computer just shut off, they may not know what's going on. But we have what's going on, we would need to cut that off.
Yeah, we can do that from an endpoint perspective. So we'll take an endpoint offline, a server, workstation, laptop server, remote employee. If we find an endpoint's been impacted, we'll take it offline and we'll stop the lateral spread. Because you have seconds and minutes to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Kind of piggyback on what you said. What, without getting too granular, what does your deployment look like? Is it an appliance? Is it software? Is it a combination?
That's a great question. So all of our services are sold a la carte. So it depends upon the customer's infrastructure. So from an endpoint perspective, it would be like a GPO push out. We would work with our project management team, customer success team. The client would actually push out those endpoints. Pretty quick to do, right? From a network perspective, we will get the IP information of the customer's infrastructure, build a network sensor, ship it out, they'd rack and stack it, it's immediately passing traffic. So the cool thing is time to value for us is very quick versus a SIM takes a long time to stand up. And then the cloud workload, same thing. There's API integrations. From a logging perspective, there's built-in APIs and connectors to onboard those log sources. So it's different depending upon what you do.
And we're a user of SentinelOne.
Oh, great.
Already. So
Yeah.
Trying to look at how that would pair onto my SD-WAN or
Oh, yeah.
SASE or,
Yeah. So do you guys monitor SentinelOne yourselves?
we actually have a monitor.
Okay. Yeah. So if you had SentinelOne and you were taking on the monitoring of that, we could do that. Provide the 24/7.
Could your product produce pattern usage between the application layer, the endpoint, and the server so that we see this pattern, but you have this much east-west traffic available to them that they shouldn't have, so that we could take and narrow this stuff down? Because a lot of this infrastructure, I would imagine most of us, have walked into somebody else's recipe book and was set up too long ago, and you got layer 2 going across and no firewalls between servers, no nothing, right? And so I'm always looking for, without me having to do it all, automated, hey, put a sensor on this, watch it, and these are the desktops and the floor is coming from, and even if it's just this port, in that respect. But then you go to the virtual side of the road, and how do you narrow that down? Like in my world, I spin up 1,000 of these plugs a day, right? I'll get same IP range, but all different world, and at any moment they could shut down and pick it up, get a new IP address, and start over.
Absolutely, yeah. So we correlate the data coming in from the different sources, and we use our platform to correlate that data. We look at user behavior analytics. We look at log alerts that are firing, network alerts, endpoint, and ultimately that's really where the threat hunter comes together, takes that intelligence to see what is the adversary doing? Why am I being pinged over here and over there? What's happening?
Question about information sharing.
We do. We do cyber information sharing. I think we do it with the Department of Homeland Security as well. We also have curated threat intelligence. So we have a threat response unit team of about 40-something people, and all they do is look at the threats that are out there, from curated threat intelligence or different threat feeds to different governments. They pull it all together because that's the whole point of the solution. I mean, if you don't know what's going on and keep up with stuff, things are going to slip through the cracks. So we do that. Anything else? Well, I appreciate everything, guys. Thank you for attending.